Welcome to the Infernal Brotherhood's Willow series. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to provide my spoiler review of, well, it's already up there, the Willow Novelization by Wayland Drew. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more Willow content, and like and share the video because, you know, that's what you have to do, right? Anyway, I'm going to be giving you my review of a book that was released in 1988. So, do I call it a spoiler, or do I just call it talking about something that should already be out there? Like, everyone should know. It's pervasive in what it is, right? I know I'm early as well, but I got stuff to do, eh? What are you gonna do? Okay, so the Willow Novelization is great. Thank you. Have a great day. See ya. No, I'm just kidding. That's not it. That should be it, because that's really what it is. This is a fantastic novelization. Usually when people talk about book to film, they have read the book first, and then they watch the film, and then they judge the film based on the merits of the book. That's just the traditional way it goes, right? With Willow, everything was released simultaneously. So they were working on the film with Ron Howard, and they sent the script out to Wayland Drew, and they sent it out to Tor Books with Alan Varney in order to do the source book. So Wayland Drew and the source book were both working off the exact same screenplay that was written by Bob Dolman. Of course, that was based on George Lucas's story. So everything was operating off of the exact same script, whether it was the film, the novelization, or the source book. So there's information that you find in all of them that all coincides. It's developed more on the source book end of things. I already did a review of that last week. But we see some scenes that were written for the film but had to be cut for time that are above and beyond the scenes that were released in the Blu-ray version that you can find on this channel of deleted scenes. Especially when we open the novelization for the first time. We get to see a scene just to prove how brutal and ruthless Bavmorda is. So I've actually already created a video called, I don't remember what it's called. It's like extra scenes in the Willow Novelization or something. And that was released in the same vein of the other videos that I put out about Willow on this playlist, on this channel. I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to sort of just freeform and talk about this as if I had read it fresh, and I'm just sort of giving you my overall review from it, right? As if it were a film, for example. Who would have thought? So my initial impressions of this novelization were, why didn't they include all of this in the film and just make it a 3-hour film? Because there's not a ton of extra content in the novel, but there is a lot, and all of it adds arguably necessary context for the film. You know, a lot of people who watched the film felt like it was a little bit hollow in Sorsha's turning from evil to good. A lot of people didn't really understand why Sherlindra didn't leave her forest and fight Bavmorda herself. You know, why was it important to give the Sherlindra's wand to this Nelwyn? Like, what does he have to do with anything? But because a lot of the context was already developed in the script, and they were just cutting it for time per, I would imagine, not just studio request, but also scenes not being able to really have the CGI worked out properly, or maybe the practical effects didn't just land the way they wanted to. But for whatever reason, the novelization provides all of that extra content. So my initial thoughts are, you have to, if you liked Willow the film, you have to read the novelization. It's not even an option at this point. And you don't even really have an excuse because it was released at the same time in '88, right? So this is the original version, the hardcover that came out, and you can see it is not meaty by any means. And I went into this, when I first bought this, I was looking at like, there's no possible way this tells the entire story of the film, period. But it does, faithfully, and it gives you extra information just to sort of nail home how short and concise the film actually is as a story. But it also gives you 8 extra pages of imagery from the film itself, which I don't know how they could fit that and all the extra content in addition to just everything else. It doesn't make sense that it would fit in such a tiny little book, but it really does. And it leaves me to believe that every other book I've ever read has just too much fat in it. Because if they can tell this in-depth of a story in, I think it was 181 pages, there's too much flowery fluff out there in every other novel I've ever read. Because this has a lot of information in it, right? Okay. So the log line of the novel is this. When a human child falls into the hands of the little people of Ufgood Reach, aspiring wizard Willow Ufgood embarks on a journey that will carry him and the child to the perilous lands under the rule of an evil sorceress. The author of the Earthring cycle proves less successful in his latest fantasy outing with this predictable though well-written fantasy quest. That is actually the synopsis they give you at the library. And they're shitting on it immediately. The author of the Earthring cycle proves less successful in this latest fantasy outing. Have you lost your mind? So I don't know if the Earthring cycle is amazing, and so by contrast, it's just not as good, or if they just don't appreciate. I don't understand why people don't love this film, and by extension, this book. I really don't get it, because it fires on all cylinders. It's not a clone of Lord of the Rings at all. So it's its own fantasy property that gives you action, adventure, love, drama, terror, desperation, and high adventure, like high fantasy adventure. What's not to love about that, right? So anyway, this was published by Ballantine Books, again on January 12th, 1988, written by Wayland Drew, based on the screenplay by Bob Dolman, from the story by George Lucas, and it has those 8 pages of insert glossy photos from the film. So some of the extra scenes that were in here that added that extra context was led by that very opening scene where Bavmorda takes a woman out from her dungeons and has her men tell her to run. And if she can reach the edge of the parade grounds, then she can be free. We saw this scene in Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, which played beautifully. Like, I absolutely love that scene in that film. Not only is that a wildly underrated film in and of itself, but it just shows the desperation of someone who has been imprisoned for no apparent reason, except for bad things that are going to inevitably happen to them. And their one shot of escape is not actually a shot of escape, because as this woman is running across the parade grounds, they release death dogs on her. And so she has to outrun death dogs in order to find her safety. And of course, it's Queen Bavmorda. She's not going to give them their safety, even if they do get away. She wouldn't want that as a sign of weakness, So it just really did a really great job of just hammering home who this person really is. So I'm not going to retell the story of Willow because we all know it and love it. But another little bit that was in the novelization, in the source book, but was cut from the film, was the fact that Mims, Willow's daughter, is also magical. So I don't know if it's a hereditary thing or if it's just a happenstance, but she was drawing pictures of death dogs before they came to attack the town. And you got to remember, Ufgood Reach, the Nelwyn Valley, they've never seen death dogs there. That's just not a thing. They have always kept to themselves, and aside from in their very distant past, they don't really have any interaction with anyone except for maybe brownies from time to time, but that's kind of it. And so for her to be able to draw that as this sort of prophecy fulfillment just sort of leads you to believe that maybe there's a little bit more to Willow's history, to his bloodline than meets the eye. Another great little scene that was cut was that on the journey from the Nelwyn village to the crossroads, animals were helping them. That's awesome. I wish they would have shown that on screen. So bears would sort of lead death dogs and Nockmaar soldiers off away from the tracks of Elora Danan and company. And then in some cases, like animals would like come out and allow Elora Danan to suckle at their teat. Yeah. And on the surface, that sounds really freaking weird. Except we drink animals' milk. Like people drink goat's milk. They drink cow milk. Why? It's really weird. Like, it's packed with vitamins and minerals because it's supposed to be for their babies, not us. It's weird that humans drink animals' milk, but they do. And so how is that, the extra step of actually sucking at the teat is the only real weird part? But it's fantasy. So I forgive the creepiness of it. It's a baby. What are you going to do? It's a baby. All right, so some other stuff. They talk about pohas in not just this novel, but also the source book. Never mentioned at all in the film, even though we see them in the inn scene when Willow is looking for milk and he like goes into that inn and runs across this older woman and asks if she has any milk to spare. And then he runs into Madmartigan. Those tattooed, sort of disheveled people were pohas. Let's see. Sherlindria actually tells the entire story of Tirys Lean and Queen Bavmorda and how Finrazel came and approached Sherlindria for help, and Sherlindria turned her away. She's like, "Hey, Bavmorda's not that bad. She's not trying to mess with my forest, so move along. Nothing to see here." It meant like a generation of darkness fell on the land, but other than that, Sherlindria's a great person. I thought it was cool that they added that. Let's see, what else? We're led to believe by the fact that we see the army of Galadorn marching ostensibly toward Nockmaar after Nockmaar routed and decimated Galadorn Castle, that the war is still ongoing. But visually on screen, we don't actually see any battle, except for when Willow and Madmartigan fall down the snow mountain. And then Eric only fights because he's suddenly inspired by Madmartigan's turn of heart to help the Noan and the baby. But then that inspires Eric to then, follow them to Tirys Lean and fight the Nockmaar soldiers there. In the novel, they actually have another scene where that group of Galadorn army that left Galadorn chasing after the Nockmaar soldiers that routed the castle, they meet. And Madmartigan's like all embarrassed and sort of a little bit afraid because he actually stole Kale's girl once. Like, Madmartigan is such a dirty dog that he just takes anyone else's girlfriend. And, I don't think it was like a official girlfriend because it's Kale, but two, it's in a time when, guys didn't really keep girlfriends. So he just stole his woman. It was messed up. But if you're a woman, hell, if you're a man, and you have a choice between Kale and Madmartigan, everyone in every case will always go with Madmartigan. It doesn't matter your sexuality. You're just like, yeah, you're a beautiful human. I want to be with you. Be gentle. That's what you would do. That's what I would do. All right. Maybe I'm telling a little too much about myself. Let's see. Frangine actually knows a lot about Madmartigan and tells a whole story about his past, which is amazing in the novel. It's like you don't get any of that. In the film, we don't even know how he got in the crow's cage, except for the fact that, it's nothing you wouldn't have done, Eric, in my position. So there's a whole story. They have history. There's something. Frangine tells it. How he knows, I have no idea. But he's a brownie. Their eyes and ears are everywhere, I guess. All right, so the fish scene, the fish boy scene, that's in the novelization, of course. And you don't have to worry about practical effects or special effects. So it's in there and it's great. I love it. Another scene that was in here that was great from this novelization was Sorsha reaching out to Willow to ask him for help with Elora Danan, like taking care of her when she's captured Madmartigan and Willow and Laura. And then she asks Willow about his home, and he starts weaving this tale about his rather beautiful home. And Sorsha has only known as a infant Tirasleen, and then it was petrified. Everyone was trapped in crystals, and then a maze was raised up around it by her own mother, Queen Bavmorda. And so she was raised in Nockmaar. And you remember what Nockmaar looked like. Not the best place for a kid to be raised in, right? I mean, not at all. It's a nightmare zone. So she doesn't understand this idea of beautiful, lush vegetation and the quiet babbling, the babbling brook, and watching birds chirp and fly around together in love. Like that, stuff like that is so foreign to her. It just doesn't register in her mind. Willow exposes her to those ideas of natural beauty and living. And that's an amazing moment that would have led to so much of justification of Sorsha turning good again, because she's not only getting these glimpses of what life actually is, versus her being told what it is through her parents and seeing what it is through Nockmaar. There's a whole wide world of beauty out there that she's first exposed to. All right, so then it's traveling to Tirasleen, and they actually run across an elf's lair. So this is something that I found that was just amazing. The source book heavily delved into the idea about this ancient cultures, ancient history of this land. The novelization touches on it just briefly. It peppers it in there with the idea of elves. And so they run into this ice cave where how elves were also fighting mountain trolls, and they just saw the remnants of the skirmish. I just love that they added in that extra bit of world building in the novelization. And then, finally, Sorsha seeing her. I skipped over Vonkar having this huge backstory and going on this massive adventure, something that Nelwyn's don't do, and that led him to be a warrior, and coming back with, I think it was a bracelet or a ring with the same symbol of Elora Danan on it, which was great. So then, the last one was Sorsha seeing her father encased in that crystal in Tirasleen, and that was sort of the last straw of her being bad, as it were. She saw that, she connected with her father, realizing that he was actually still alive in suspended animation, and then just sort of reflected back on all the experiences she had, the love and devotion that Madmartigan had showed her, albeit through the dust of broken hearts, but still, when Madmartigan tells you you are his sun, moon, and starlit sky, yeah, my panties are wet just talking about it. So why, of course. So my favorite parts of this novelization, it was definitely the extra stuff. I mean, the truth is I've seen the movie, I think near 100 or over 100 times. I literally watched it every Sunday when my parents went to church. I would stay home, throw in the VCR, and just watch it. So I know the movie front and back. I'm just familiar with it. It would be hard for me to call out a favorite scene from the film. But from the novel, where it gives me all of this extra added scenes and information and context, I gotta be honest, I think my favorite is Vonkar. Like, understanding the journey that he goes on, and then he's gifted this sort of protection symbol by the elves in order for later on to fulfill that prophecy by fighting those death dogs in his village. I think not only is that beautiful, but it just adds this wonderful extra sense of adventure and strength to the Nelwyns that without Vonkar, you don't have. They're just living this sort of hobbit lifestyle, which I wouldn't mind living myself, given the opportunity. But, just seeing that, no, they break out of the mold, and some of them are forced into this life of soldiering. And Vonkar did it willingly, and he adventured beyond the borders of the film, which, showed this vast landscape and stuff too. So I think that's my favorite part of this film. I'm sorry, the novelization. The least favorite parts, it's too short, to have a least favorite part of this novel, right? At 181 pages, you just devour this in a day and you're just sort of left wanting more. Literally. It's a good thing there's a trilogy of novels after it. You got this from Amazon a few weeks ago, Marion. Thanks for joining live, by the way. That's great. You still remember the coffee stains from your dad reading it? That's awesome. I have like these weird fantasies about reading. Like I love the idea of sitting down under a blanket, getting all warm and cozy, getting a cup of coffee or a glass of water, and then just putting my glasses on and reading. Like that's attractive to me. I just fantasize about it. That's why I read I read a book a week, and I've done it for a year, going on. So it's just that, I mean, there's something beautiful about losing. I get this from Neverending Story, about losing yourself in a story, right? There's something wonderful about transporting yourself to somewhere else and living someone else's life vicariously through the pages, through the written word that is genuinely magical. And being able to do that with wonderful fantasy worlds like Willow it's just a pleasure. It's a gift. I love it so much. And just the visual of coffee stains, it's just awesome. That little ring of coffee. It's great. So I wouldn't even mind. This thing is actually pretty battered. It's got like a little cut here, but it is first issue. It's from 1988, so it seems to have been read a lot, which I think is a great sign of any book. And I would much prefer to buy a used book than a new book of a time, because I'm not a collector in the sense of I want to keep things pristine. I'm a collector as in I want to relive this experience. I want to transport myself to the land of Willow and just have a good time while I'm there. And this book gives it to you in spades. So if you love the film, you have to buy and read this book. You can probably find it at your library, so you don't even have to buy it. It's free. Just go to your library. If you love the source book, you got to read this novelization, because a lot of that information comes from here. Not all of it, but a lot of it. It's informed by it. And then if you just love Willow, then you have to read this book. It's definitely worth the time. You should definitely take my word for it. Do a little reading rainbow there. Yes, read it, buy it, love it, own it. It's great. So I would give Willow the novelization, 5 stars. It's just 5 out of 5. It's great. The film is 5 out of 5. The source book is 5 out of 5. I just desperately love this world, and I cannot for the life of me understand why anyone does not. It's original, it's intriguing, and it's fantasy. What's not to love? All right. So anyway, that is all the time I have to talk about the Willow novelization by Wayland Drew. Thank you all so much for joining me in this review. Again, every week I'm going to be putting out some form of Willow content. Now that I'm finished releasing all the information from the Willow source book, I'm going to be moving on to the Chronicles of the Shadow War, which is the sequel trilogy to Willow. And I'm also going to be diving into the comics. Like I'm going to do a live comic reading, so you can see the comic going by as I read it. I'm going to be playing the video games at some point, maybe, if I have time. I have a life. The point being, more Willow content is coming. And then as soon as that series comes out, oh my goodness, I'm going to be all over it. So I'm going to give you regular weekly reviews of those episodes when they drop. And then I'll probably do extra stuff on top of that of just giving you initial reactions of the episodes, maybe breaking down like the greater scope of the world that they're unraveling. I'm hoping that they take cues from Chronicles of the Shadow War. I'm hoping, but you never really know with Disney. They can just totally scrap it and do their own thing. If that's the case, fingers crossed, it's going to be great. I'm not one of those doomsayers that says just because Disney's doing it or just because someone else bought the IP that it's going to inevitably be bad. It may be, but I'm going to give you honest, critical reviews of it. I'm not going to just hate it because it's not George Lucas anymore. I mean, I just don't understand that ideology. So that's not what you're going to get here. I just want to say welcome and thank you to all of the subscribers who have joined in the last, I don't know, 7, 8 months that I started doing these Willow videos. I really appreciate your time and attention. I know I've been keeping them short and concise, and so it's really easy to sort of digest a bunch of them in a row. Hey, Aaron. Aaron, how you doing? I'm at the tail end of this, sorry, but it's good to see you. Thanks for doing live. I just appreciate that, we can share our love of this fantasy series together. And I want you to know you can expect more of it. So thank you guys for your time and attention. I hope you have a fantastic day. And until next time, may the force be with you.